Welcome to Washington Desk. I'm your host, Neil W. McCabe. We have a phenomenal program lined up for you. First, we're going to talk to my good friend, Jim Pfaff, who is the president of the Conservative Caucus. The president said recently that the United States has lost 90,000 factories, plants, not refineries, but like smelters. And this is an opportunity, perhaps, to reshore some of those factory jobs. Let's talk to my good friend, Jim Pfaff. There's so much to talk about going on in Washington, D.C., and of course, you're completely locked into this. Because of the jobs you've held, you understand the inner workings of this machine, right? And so first, let's talk about Chief Justice John Roberts and the trouble he's gotten himself into. This is the second time he has stepped forward out of his sort of, I'm just calling balls and strikes. We're not supposed to be involved. And all of a sudden he's involved. In the first term, he chastised President Trump. Now in the second term, he's gone again. What's your call on Roberts criticizing Trump because he supports the impeachment of rogue judges? Go ahead, please, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what really is frustrating about this entire process of what's going on is, for example, in one of these major cases, you have a district judge who has one portion of Northern California in the San Francisco area who receives a case that plaintiffs put out that is far too broad, has far too many people that they're actually, many of whom not directly counsel for because the other people aren't paying for it. And he makes a sweeping decision over an entire process within the executive branch. Listen, courts are supposed to judge on discrete cases at law, meaning the counsel represents specific named people and the judgment is about what, at least in the pre-appellate level, the judgment is about what's specific to that case. John Roberts had an opportunity to stop that process. There are many legal scholars that are very, very frustrated with what is happening. And I mentioned one case. There are 100 or more cases right now where you've got Democrats, Mark Elias, George Soros' Open Society Foundation. They're putting out lawsuits just to stop Donald Trump from being president. That is their entire goal. But Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution says the executive power is given to a president of the United States, the sitting president. And they're using the judicial system to shut it down. John Roberts knows that this is bad. He had an opportunity to fix a bad problem. This is a guy who has claimed for years he wants the authority and the trust in the court to be very strong, but he keeps undermining that trust and authority at every turn. This is a really, really bad situation he's put himself in. Twice, by the way, to a guy, John Roberts says he's against the administrative state. Twice, he supported Obamacare on two different cases that caught up two different aspects of Obamacare, which is clearly unconstitutional. And he refused. He was the deciding vote that kept it in play. This guy is a grave disappointment for many years.
Here's a guy, John Roberts, right? He says, I just call balls and strikes. And he also, when the conservative majority looks like it's going to succeed, he will, because of his prerogatives as the Chief Justice, he will weigh in to try to make the conservative judgment as narrow as possible so it virtually affects nothing, right?
Yeah.
However, when he does nothing, when you have a federal judge in some single district who's basically making a judgment for like the entire free world. And basically this judge is ordering military planes to turn around, right? Military planes under the command of the President of the United States. Turn around. I'm a judge in the District of Columbia. How dare you? There was a priest I follow, Father Esposito. I follow him on X. He said Trump should have ran for district judge if he really wanted to run the government, because that's how it's done. That's how it's done. So what happens before we move on to another friend of yours, Chuck Schumer? What happens? does Robert get disciplined? Does Roberts get ignored? How does this play out quick? Because I want to go to Schumer.
Yeah, the only way to discipline him per se is impeachment proceedings. I don't know. I wouldn't support that. What does need to happen is public shaming of him from politicians. Listen, FDR shamed the court, and he got the court to do what he wanted by threatening them. And he did take on a political power. So Donald Trump needs to take that on. He's being wise right now. He's not saying we need to ignore courts and do nothing. But he does need to put the political pressure on these guys. And I think that's an appropriate way to handle this.
Yeah, 1,000%. Okay, the senator from New York, the senior senator from New York, Chuck Schumer, has always played a very clever game. He's raised money for Republican senators on the side. He's had his team, his staff, write bills that he convinced Republican senators to sponsor and be the front man for. Over and over again, there are these bills where you look at it and say, why would Pat Toomey be sponsoring an anti-gun bill? It's because it was written by Schumer, and Schumer put him up to it. And he does this over and over again. And everyone gives McConnell credit. Too few people are giving Schumer credit for being a master of the dark arts of Capitol Hill, especially on that Senate wing. However, he really jacked things up. He did not play it well. What happens with Chuck Schumer?
Well, first of all, the reason he did what he did is he actually read the political winds properly. Democrats were going to get slaughtered if there was a government shutdown. He knew that and was trying to avoid it. Do not read into Chuck Schumer's vote for the CR that he was coming to some reasonable conclusion that it would be a good thing to do. It had nothing to do with it. It was entirely political. But what's going to happen to him now that he has taken that stand? He is in a very precarious situation, not the potential of AOC running against him in a Democrat primary. By the way, I don't think she can win statewide.
Well, that's not till 28.
That's not till 28. What will be a challenge is his leadership position. Will Democrats bolt from him in the Senate? I don't see that happening yet. There may be a pressure point that comes, but I don't see it yet. Remember, it's the House that's mad at him and going after him right now.
Remember that the majority-minority leader, that is not a constitutional position. That's a party position. So he can be overthrown. All he needs is whatever simple majority of the senators on the Democratic side. They could toss him out at lunch. Last thing is JD Vance has been named the treasurer of the Republican National Committee. Does that set him up for 28 and what I've called the 12-year ticket, Trump, Vance, Vance? Your call, sir.
If JD Vance runs RNC the way it ought to be run, which I'll give a little bit of credit to Mark Watley during last year's election, although not enough because he's still kind of an establishment guy.
Having said that, go ahead.
Yeah. So JD Vance doing this, if he'll run it the right way and make it stop being a place for consultants to make a lot of money and make it be a place to find consultants that will help win elections, he will be president for 8 years and we will all be happy about it. I'm not endorsing him now. What I'm saying is I think he's setting himself up for that. And it would be positive for conservatives and for MAGA.
Jimmy, I never love you as much as when you agree with me. That's a beautiful thing.
Hey, why you interview your friends?
Exactly. It's so much easier this way. All right. We'll see you next week. Check out the Conservative Caucus. And thanks, Jimmy. We'll see you next week. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks, my friend.